You're listening to the CIP podcast, the Study Abroadcast, episode 7. I'm your host, Jacqueline. In this show, we'll explore the world of study abroad, offering advice, insights, and travel stories, bridging perspectives and cultures along the way. On this episode, we'll be speaking with past University of Guelph exchange students who also served as peer helpers for the Center for International Programs. Today on the show, we're pleased to welcome Caitlin and Mary. To get started, Caitlin, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your exchange experience?
Why, of course, Jacqueline. So I am a recently graduated student from the University of Guelph. I graduated last spring, and I went to the University of Dundee, Scotland in the fall of 2018, so just over 2 years ago. But I loved it so much, and it definitely changed me as a person and as a student and just how I handle life in general. And I would definitely recommend it just to any person who is listening to this podcast to go on exchange, because you can't really experience it without going.
Thanks, Caitlin. And Mary, what about you? What was your exchange experience like?
My name's Mary. I also recently graduated last year after winter semester, and I went in my third year winter semester when I was an undergrad, and I went to the University of Adelaide in South Australia. I went for the one semester, and it was super fun. I met almost some of my closest friends there, and I miss it every day. I mean, also, they don't have a pandemic there right now, so I wish I just never left Australia. Yeah, it's just a super fun time, and I pretty much recommend it to everyone I know. So it's definitely an experience that everyone has to go through.
So it sounds like you both had a pretty good experience. And so after you returned from your studying abroad, you became a peer helper with CIP. What did you like the most about this experience?
I would say for the Center for International Programs, why I wanted to do it was because I felt once I got back from studying abroad, I was never going to be able to stop talking about studying abroad, and I knew my friends were going to hate me afterwards. And so the CIP program let me basically take all that energy I had and enthusiasm about abroad and basically put it out to people who actually want to listen to me talk about the experience, because they're also thinking about going on that experience. I was also able to help people, ease their nerves, answer their questions, and just help them make that decision, because I feel like that decision really affects your life in general, because it's such a big decision to go abroad.
Yeah, it can be a big decision, and I know a lot of students come to us with questions. So Mary, what about you? What did you like most about your experience as a CIP peer helper?
Pretty much the same thing as Caitlin. I just remember knowing that after my experience, there would be no way for me to kind of decompress from my exchange to kind of just be like, I'm home. Okay, school again. So I just knew that I wanted to help new students that were coming in and encourage them to go abroad, just because I knew what an incredible experience it was. So I knew that I wanted as many people to go as possible, because I think it's definitely something that I talk to people about, and they're like, yeah, I wish I had done that during my undergrad. Like, it's something people regret if they don't do it. So I knew I wanted to be one of those people who help them get to the next step. And you just never get tired of talking about your experience. I remember just bringing up random stuff random things I did abroad to students that came up to ask questions. I was like, yeah, you can do this as well. It was just super fun, and I loved it.
I know a lot of students sometimes they feel bad asking so many questions about your experience and what you did while you were abroad, but it's true for the peer helpers. It's such a great opportunity just to relive your exchange so many times and answer all of these questions. From a professional standpoint, what do you think you gained from a skills perspective when you were a peer helper with CIP?
So when I was a peer helper with CIP, I found that I gained a lot more experience, different experience from this position than I did from my previous jobs that were more customer service based and restaurant industry based and things like that. Specifically, I gained a lot more experience with working with computers, basically working at a desk, because I've never had one of those jobs before. So I worked with a lot of Excel spreadsheets, which I didn't know how to use a lot, and Jacqueline definitely helped me out with that. But as well as just working on the website, finding little projects that don't necessarily need to be fixed, but they could definitely be improved, because it's always good to be improving things, even if things aren't necessarily broken, as well as just engaging a student experience, finding ways for people to be engaged in your business, in your group, whatever it may be. I've never really had experience with that. And so it was interesting looking at it from that perspective to see how to engage viewers in CIP and how to engage them with the idea of exchange.
And Mary, what about you? What kind of skills did you learn?
I think one thing that was super great about being a peer helper with CIP was that every idea was welcome. Like, Jacqueline's so good with just accepting every idea you like give her. That's why I just love like showing up to work, just like sitting there at the desk, because even if I wasn't really doing anything like super productive or like doing something that was assigned to me, like I was still always like thinking of ideas to try and encourage students to go abroad, or like how we could change something that we already had in place to make it more like engaging, or how we could make things more effective and efficient and stuff like that. So it was always a great atmosphere where no idea was ever shot down. And I think that allowed me personally to like develop a skill of just like thinking more outside the box, where like it wasn't just a menial job where you do the same repetitive thing over and over again. You could actually like come into work and like think of new ideas and be creative and like basically like bring your own kind of flair to the job. But yeah, other than that, I mean, skills in a professional setting with like social media and stuff like that. And I remember learning about Canva and Hootsuite, which are like programs we use for like our social media platforms. And I mean, not gonna lie, I still use Canva now.
Yeah, it sounds like there's lots of different skills, and I mean, personally, I would agree that there's lots that kind of we take on a lot of different projects, and the projects differ from semester to semester, so it gives lots of different opportunities to work on different types of skills. So I think for the next question, a lot of students who study abroad, when they come back, they really look for ways to hold on to their international experience. So what advice would you give to those students who want to continue having those intercultural experiences?
Well, I think personally, what I did, which is pretty obvious because of this podcast, is I became a CIP peer helper. That was my main solution, was to just never stop talking about abroad ever. But I think it is definitely an issue for a lot of students who come back. I know I experienced it, where you just feel sort of out of place after coming from out of exchange, because you built yourself into this life in another country, and it's hard to settle back into your old life once you come back. And so that's why I really held on to those experiences, just to help the transition itself. And I think a lot of students and people need that sort of support when they come back. And so even if people don't want to become perhaps peer helpers for CIP, there's tons of ways to get involved with CIP, and just other ways as well. Like, you can be a study abroad ambassador, you can participate in the study abroad fair. A lot of times there's those meetings where future study abroad participants can go meet with past study abroad participants. I always love those because that's a perfect way for someone to pick your brain about the specific school you went to or the specific country you went to, because they will be truly interested because they've already been placed at that school or in that country. So that's a great way. That's not really a big commitment, but also a good way to keep talking about it. As well as just, keep in touch with your exchange friends. They're all going through the same thing. They're also wanting to go back for their international experiences, wherever those are. Have group chats, have group calls, go visit them, if that's possible. Obviously right now it's not. But, just keep in touch, because those are some fantastic friends that you've made. I know, just like Mary was saying, some of them are probably my still closest friends to this day, and I would love to go see them. And so it's good to hold on to those, because you bonded as people and you grew as people as well when you were on exchange.
I think those are some really good points and a very thorough answer, Caitlin. Mary, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, same thing. I became a CIP, so I never had to stop talking about exchange. One thing I definitely recommend is like make sure you get like all the friends you want to keep in touch with, like their contacts. And like there's so many social media platforms that you can definitely stay connected. It's just one of those friendships where you'll always have that bond. Also, just go to the events that CIP has to offer. every event, whether or not it's like for the incoming or outgoing students, like you just need some place where everyone has that same like ambition of wanting to just go travel, go do all this stuff, and it's just like a good atmosphere to be in.
I think that's a good point. And Mary, for you, I know the situation ended up changing because of COVID, but you were going to apply to a summer language program as well after you returned. So maybe another option would be for students to kind of look at other programs offered by CIP. So, Caitlin, I know in your answer you also mentioned becoming a study abroad ambassador. So, I was wondering if you could elaborate on that and give some background about what it means to be a study abroad ambassador.
Yeah, so from what I remember, I'm a tad rusty in the CIP knowledge, but so for a study abroad ambassador, it's a way to contribute to CIP in a way that's a smaller commitment than being a peer helper. You can basically answer a set of pre-made questions, basically outlining what your abroad experience was like, because everyone has a different experience. And what this does is it basically gets put onto the CIP website, and anyone can go and look. And so I believe it's organized by country or possibly by school, or it shows your name and you can go and click on that. It shows a nice, happy photo of you in whatever country you went and traveled to. And you can basically just brag about your experience. You can post a bunch of photos and it's a way for people to go and browse. If they aren't feeling super social and they don't want to go to these events, they can just go to the CIP website and they can just browse through all of these people's experience, and they can get a broader sense of what it's like to study abroad, or as well just know what it's like to live in that country and the different experiences people have had. So it's a good way to participate, and it's a good way to get out some of that, the tension that you may have from coming back and not being able to talk about it. And so I would definitely recommend, if you want to get involved, Study Abroad Ambassador is a good place to start.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I know Caitlin and Mary both mentioned how like you have all of these experiences and all of these things that you developed while you were abroad, and you don't really have a way to express it or a way to handle it once you come home. And so one of the projects that CIP is actually working on now is we're creating a re-entry program. So all students, once they return from their study abroad experience, they're going to have some more support in order to process these emotions and process these feelings, also figure out ways to get involved and how they can apply this to their academics and also their future careers. And so we've kind of listened to students when they've returned, and hopefully this program will help ease some of these transition periods for students. I think over the course of this whole podcast episode, we've kind of talked about how exchange is such a big experience. There's a lot of things that happen, a lot of things that you develop, and it is a big transition in your life. And so when you think about that experience, has it helped you in terms of your transition after graduation? Because that's another transition in people's lives.
I would say definitely. Like when I graduated right at the beginning of the pandemic. So A, it was pretty weird in general. But B, like when you go on exchange, you're left in a strange country basically by yourself when you arrive, and you're faced with this challenge of integrating yourself into this new culture, and you don't really have a way to back out. So it forces you to just face the challenge head on and go for it because you don't have any other choice. And I feel like graduation is kind of the same way. It throws you into real life and you can't really back out of it. So having that exchange experience is a good little mini step to know how to face those challenges head on. And it just lets the anxiety fade away, I guess, and it just lets you face it with more of a problem solving attitude rather than a scared attitude. And it just lets you, transition a little bit faster, I would say.
I think that's a really good point. It kind of helps your viewpoint, I guess, or how you look at transitions ahead. What about you, Mary?
Yeah, so I totally agree with what you said. Like, it's one of those things where it almost makes you feel smaller because you just realize how big the world is.
Yeah, I think those are all some really good points. And I think it helps us transition into this next question. These last two questions, I guess. We're going to ask for one piece of advice if you were to give advice to prospective students who are interested in study abroad, Caitlin, what piece of advice would you give them?
Do it. Go study abroad. I feel like that's the most obvious advice, but you're probably worried about a lot of different things. You probably have a lot of questions in your head about studying abroad and you're still not sure of it, but trust me, you will not regret it. I have never talked to anyone who has studied abroad who has been like, meh, it was okay, or like, meh, wish I didn't go. Like, no one has ever said that. You will have an amazing time. You will make friends from all around the world, and you will get to travel to so many more countries than you've ever expected, or so many different places than you ever would have thought about going to. And I think you are going to have an amazing time. So don't overthink it. These podcasts, the website, the info sessions, they're all there to help you make that decision. Just do it. I'm going to end it with that.
Great advice. What about you, Mary?
I think my one piece of advice would be just don't let the little things get you down. Because I'm going to be honest, it's not going to be one smooth ride all the way over there. You're not going to, hit every green light. There's going to be road bumps, and just don't let that interfere with how it's going. Like, don't let a delayed flight be like the reason like your trip starts off on a bad foot or something. The experience is gonna be way more than what you expect anyway. So just don't let the little things get you down, because overall you're just gonna have a great experience, and your experience is what you make of it. It doesn't matter like if you don't end up at your first choice university or the country that you want to go to. Everyone has a great experience no matter where they go. It's just how they make that experience theirs.
I think that's a good point. A lot of people do talk about like how exchange was so great and everything, but there are going to be challenges along the way, and sometimes it's those challenges that make like the better times that much better. So it's important to keep in mind that it's not a smooth ride the whole way, but it's worth it. So last piece of advice for students who are interested in becoming a peer helper with CIP, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to also do it. This is because CIP, being a peer helper, is a really great way to get into extracurriculars with the school. If you're finding it hard to find a group that you like to be in, this is basically just a club for people that went on exchange and like to talk about it. It's a good way to, continue with your exchange experience, to help with those who want to go on exchange. There's a lot of fun events that you get to go and you get to lead. The atmosphere of CIP is amazing. So I think it's a really great way if you want to get involved with the school and you don't necessarily know how. This is a great way to continue talking about your exchange experience and helping others out.
Great advice. I like that you kept it consistent. Mary, what about you? Do you have any advice for prospective peer helpers?
Yeah, I totally agree with Caitlin. You definitely find out way more stuff about everything else that CIP runs as a peer helper than when you're like an applying student. Everyone on the team is amazing. Shout out to everyone on CIP. It's just a great team to be in. I remember like I was always scared to like join kind of a school like club, and I was like, I just want to be part of something, but I'm too nervous and awkward to be part of anything. So then I remember applying to this. I was like, okay, like everyone here like has the same mindset. They've all been abroad. It's going to be a good atmosphere. And like obviously in the end, it ended up being exactly that. Everyone I met on the team, all the peers, everyone I worked with, like everyone was super nice. Everyone just has that same mindset of we traveled. It was great. Let's all talk about it. So it's just a great atmosphere and environment to be in.
Well, I'm glad to hear you guys had such a great time as a peer helper with CIP. It made this podcast a lot easier. So thank you guys for sharing all of your experiences and your insights and advice. That's all for today's episode of the Study Abroadcast. Don't forget to explore your own study abroad opportunities on the CIP website, uoguelph.ca/CIP, or follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Our Instagram handle is CIP_Guelph. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Caitlin and Mary for sharing all of their experiences. Stay tuned for our next episode where we look to unpack the study abroad experience even further.
do 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 do.